Millionaire CEO, saw a poor girl mocked for her torn dress, then learned a truth that broke his heart. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. On a cold winter evening, as the lights of the city shimmered like 1,000 tiny stars, Michael Anderson, a millionaire CEO, walked briskly through the downtown streets, his thoughts consumed by the meetings that had taken up his entire day. He didn't see the people around him. They were nothing more than blurry figures, all just part of the noise of his controlled, predictable world. He had everything anyone could ask for: money, status, power, but somehow it never felt like enough. As he passed by the bustling shops and luxury boutiques, the cold wind cutting through his perfectly tailored coat, something unusual caught his eye. A small figure stood off to the side of the street, huddled against a brick wall, drenched by the rain that had begun to fall. The girl was no older than 10, her clothes torn, the fabric hanging in tatters around her thin frame. She was shivering in the cold, her small hands clutched tightly around an old, battered backpack. No one seemed to notice her. People walked by without a second glance, absorbed in their own lives, their own problems. But Michael couldn't ignore her. His steps slowed as he passed, his attention pulled toward her. He didn't know why he stopped. Maybe it was the way her frailty seemed to cut through the noise of the busy street. Or maybe it was the desperate look in her eyes. A few feet away, a group of teenagers burst into laughter. They had gathered around the girl, mocking her torn dress. "Look at her," one of them sneered. "Does she even know what a real dress looks like?" The others joined in, their cruel laughter ringing in Michael's ears. For a brief moment, Michael stood frozen, the harshness of their words cutting through him. He could feel his heart clench at the sight of the little girl, standing there, completely vulnerable. She didn't respond, didn't even flinch at their words. She just stood there, her eyes downcast, the weight of the world on her tiny shoulders. Michael knew he couldn't just walk away. There was something in the way she stood, something in the emptiness in her eyes, that called to him. He couldn't explain why, but he knew he had to act. He took a step forward, his voice softer than he expected as he addressed the group. "That's enough," he said firmly. And the teenagers froze, their attention now focused on him. "She's just a kid." Without another word, he turned toward the little girl. Her eyes met his, and for the first time, he saw something break through the walls she had built around herself. A flicker of hope. He crouched down to her level, his heart pounding in his chest. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked, gently. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked at him with wide, wary eyes, as if she were unsure whether he was just another person who would pass her by, just another stranger who wouldn't care. But something in her eyes shifted. "I don't have anywhere to go," she whispered, her voice barely audible, like she was afraid someone might hear her and punish her for speaking. Michael's heart tightened. He didn't know what to say. He didn't know what she needed. But in that moment, he realized he couldn't just leave her there. "Come with me," he said, his voice steady but gentle. "I'll make sure you're safe." As he helped her to her feet, the sound of the world seemed to fade away. The noise of the city, the laughter of the teenagers, all of it disappeared as he led her toward his car. It was an instinct, a deep, primal urge to protect. He didn't know why he felt so compelled to help this girl, but he couldn't ignore the pull in his chest. She didn't say anything more as they walked together, but Michael could feel her uncertainty. She was still so young, so fragile, and the weight of her situation hung heavy in the air. What was her story? What had led her to this moment? He didn't know yet, but he was determined to find out. Asterisk. Asterisk. Millionaire CEO saw a poor girl, mocked for her torn dress, then learned a truth that broke his heart. Asterisk. Asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. As Michael helped the girl into the back seat of his car, he felt an overwhelming need to protect her. She was so small, so fragile, and the cold, harsh world outside had already proven to be far too much for her to bear. The warmth of the car was a stark contrast to the world they had just left behind. She sat quietly, clutching her torn backpack tightly to her chest, her eyes fixed on the floor, as though she were trying to disappear into the seat. Michael didn't speak at first. He wasn't sure what to say. He had helped her without thinking, but now that they were alone, he couldn't help but feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. Who was this girl? Why was she alone? Where had she come from? He couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to her story. Something far deeper than just a little girl who had been left out in the cold. The silence in the car was thick with tension, and Michael couldn't take it anymore. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice gentle but firm. The girl hesitated for a moment, her fingers twitching nervously around the straps of her backpack. "Ava," she whispered finally, her voice barely audible. "Ava," Michael repeated softly, trying to let the name settle in his mind. "Ava, where are your parents?" The girl stiffened at the question, her eyes filling with a mixture of fear and sadness. For a long moment, she didn't answer. Michael waited, giving her the space she needed. He could see the internal battle waging in her, as though she were trying to decide whether she could trust him with the truth. Finally, she spoke, her voice shaky. "My mom, she's really sick," Ava said, her eyes welling up with tears. "I have to bring her dinner, but I don't know where to go now." Michael's heart broke at the words. He could feel the desperation in her voice, the weight of her responsibility pressing down on her small shoulders. It was clear that she was just a child, but she had already been forced to take on responsibilities that no one her age should have to bear. "Ava," he said, his voice softening, "you don't have to worry about that right now. You're safe. I'll take care of you." He glanced at her in the rearview mirror, his eyes meeting hers for the first time. She was staring at him, her expression uncertain, as if she couldn't believe the words he was saying. For a moment, Michael wondered if he had made the right choice in bringing her along. He didn't know what was waiting for him or Ava when they arrived at the hospital, but something deep inside told him that this moment, this encounter, was meant to happen. He had been drawn to her for a reason. The drive to the hospital felt like an eternity. The streets passed by in a blur, the headlights from passing cars casting long shadows across the road. Ava remained silent, her small hand clutching the strap of her backpack, her eyes darting nervously from the window to Michael. He could tell that she was still trying to process everything that had happened in the past few minutes. When they finally arrived at the hospital, Michael parked the car and got out, opening the door for Ava. She hesitated for a moment, but then climbed out of the car. With a small, uncertain step, he gently guided her toward the entrance, and she followed him, her head down, her small hand gripping his sleeve. As they walked through the hospital's automatic doors, Michael felt a pang of guilt. He had promised Ava that she would be safe, but he didn't know what would happen next. He didn't know if she had family waiting for her, or if her mother was really as sick as she had said. But one thing was certain: he couldn't just turn back now. He had made a promise to her, and he intended to keep it. "We'll get you some help, okay?" Michael said softly, glancing down at Ava. She nodded without saying anything, her face still pale with worry. They reached the triage nurse at the front desk, and Michael explained the situation. The nurse glanced at the small girl standing beside him, then back at Michael, her face showing no sign of surprise. "We'll take her from here," the nurse said, gently leading Ava away. As they walked down the hallway, Michael stayed by Ava's side, not wanting to leave her alone in such a foreign, intimidating place. Ava looked up at him, her eyes wide and filled with fear. "Is my mommy going to be okay?" she asked, her voice trembling. Michael bent down to her level, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We'll make sure she gets the help she needs," he said, his voice steady. Ava didn't say anything more, but Michael could see the faintest glimmer of hope in her eyes. It was the first time since they had met that she seemed to relax, if only for a moment. Michael knew that there was more to this story than he had yet uncovered. But for now, all he could do was be there for Ava, to offer her the safety and comfort she had been desperately searching for. Asterisk, asterisk. Millionaire CEO saw a poor girl, mocked for her torn dress, then learned a truth that broke his heart. Asterisk, asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Michael sat in the sterile waiting room of the hospital, his mind racing. He had never been in a situation like this before. Never had he found himself responsible for a child he barely knew, someone whose world was so far removed from his own. He glanced over at Ava, sitting in the corner of the room, her eyes still wide with uncertainty. She was fidgeting with the strap of her backpack, lost in her thoughts. He couldn't help but think about the past few hours, how quickly everything had changed. He had been so caught up in his own life, consumed by meetings and numbers, that he had never taken a moment to really look around him, to see what was happening just outside his bubble. But now, here he was, with a young girl in need, and he had no idea what to do next. His mind kept returning to the words she had whispered earlier, the ones that had haunted him. "My mom is really sick." She had said it so quietly, so matter-of-factly, as though it was something she had said 100 times before. But Michael knew that behind those words, there was more, so much more. And yet, despite not knowing the full story, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was meant to be here, meant to help. A nurse approached them, pulling Michael from his thoughts. "Mr. Anderson," she said, her voice polite but tinged with urgency. "Ava's mother is in critical condition. She needs immediate attention. We've already started her treatment, but we need to discuss the next steps." Michael nodded, his stomach tightening at the news. He followed the nurse down the hallway to the intensive care unit, his heart heavy with the weight of the situation. Ava was still by his side, her small hand gripping his sleeve. She hadn't said a word since they had entered the hospital, but he could feel the anxiety radiating from her. "Is my mommy going to be okay?" she asked quietly, her voice barely a whisper. Michael looked down at her, feeling a wave of guilt wash over him. He wasn't a doctor. He didn't have the answers, but he couldn't tell her that. Instead, he offered her a gentle smile, trying to reassure her, though he wasn't sure he believed the words himself. "They're doing everything they can to help her, Ava," he said, his voice steady but filled with concern. "Your mom is strong, and we're going to make sure she gets through this." As they approached the hospital room, Michael's mind was racing. He had never been in a hospital like this before. Never had he seen someone so close to death, so fragile. But he could see that Ava was trying to be brave, trying to hold it together, and it broke his heart. He pushed the door open and stepped inside, the sterile smell of antiseptic filling his nostrils. Ava's mother was lying in a hospital bed, her face pale, her body hooked up to several machines that beeped steadily in the background. She looked so small, so fragile, and Michael couldn't help but feel a deep sense of sorrow for this woman who had clearly been through so much. He gently helped Ava to a chair beside the bed, and she immediately took her mother's hand, her small fingers trembling as she held on to her. The room was quiet for a moment, the only sound the soft hum of the machines. Michael stood by the door, not wanting to intrude, but knowing that Ava needed him to be there. It wasn't just about taking her to the hospital, it was about offering her the emotional support she needed in this moment of crisis. He wasn't sure how to help, but he knew he had to try. "She's always been so strong," Ava whispered, her voice cracking as she looked up at Michael. "She's always taken care of me. I don't know what I'll do if she... Her words trailed off, and Michael could see the tears welling up in her eyes. Without thinking, he moved to her side, kneeling down so he was eye level with her. "You're not alone, Ava," he said softly. "I'm here. I'll help you take care of your mom. We'll get through this together." Ava looked up at him, her eyes full of a mixture of hope and fear. For the first time since they had met, she smiled, though it was small and fragile. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Michael's heart swelled with a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. In that moment, he realized that the world he had been living in, the world of wealth and success, had never brought him the kind of fulfillment he was feeling now. It wasn't about the money or the power. It was about this moment, about helping someone when they needed it the most. The hospital room felt warmer, filled with a quiet sense of hope that wasn't there before. As he stood beside Ava, watching her hold her mother's hand, he made a promise to himself that he would do whatever it took to help this little girl and her family. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew that he couldn't turn his back on them now. Whatever happened, he would be there for Ava, and he would help her mother through this difficult time. The weight of the world seemed to shift in that moment, and for the first time in a long time, Michael felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Asterisk, asterisk, Millionaire CEO saw a poor girl, mocked for her torn dress, then learned a truth that broke his heart. Asterisk, asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. As the hours passed in the sterile, dimly lit hospital room, Michael sat beside Ava, who had barely moved from her seat. Her mother, still unconscious, was hooked to several machines, her breathing shallow, the faint beeping of the heart monitor filling the silence. Michael glanced at Ava, who had fallen asleep, her head resting on the edge of the bed, her tiny hand still clutching her mother's. The girl had been so brave, so quiet, but Michael could see the exhaustion written all over her face. The weight of the world seemed to be resting on her fragile shoulders, and it tore at his heart to see her this way. It wasn't just the physical exhaustion from what she'd gone through today. It was something deeper, something he couldn't fully understand, but knew all too well. He had been there alone in a world that was too big, too harsh, and too cold. He knew what it felt like to be left behind. He wasn't used to being in a hospital, especially not in the middle of the night. This was a new experience for him, one that was testing him in ways he didn't expect. It wasn't just about helping Ava and her mother, it was about confronting his own fears, his own loneliness. It was about realizing that in the midst of his success, his wealth, and his powerful position, he had been blind to the most important things in life: connection, compassion, and love. As he sat there, lost in thought, a nurse walked into the room, her soft footsteps breaking the stillness. She gave Michael a polite nod and turned her attention to Ava's mother, adjusting the IV line and checking the monitors. Michael stood up, not wanting to disturb the nurse's work. He stepped toward the window, staring out at the city skyline. The lights of the buildings were twinkling in the distance, but somehow, it all seemed so far away. He had everything he could ever need: money, success, and the admiration of others, but in this moment, standing in the hospital, watching a little girl cling to her mother in a way he never thought possible, he realized how empty it all felt. The life he had built had been for him, and only for him. He hadn't done anything to make the world a better place. He hadn't reached out to those who needed help, hadn't shared his wealth or his knowledge to make a difference. He had been focused solely on his own ambitions, chasing after goals that felt meaningless now. He turned away from the window, his gaze falling on Ava. Her mother's hand was still clasped tightly in hers. Despite everything, despite the fear and uncertainty, she had found a way to hold on. Michael walked back to her side, kneeling down beside the chair. He gently touched her shoulder, and she stirred, her eyes fluttering open. "How's she doing?" Michael asked, quietly. Ava's voice was small, her words thick with emotion. "She's still asleep," she said, wiping a tear from her cheek. "But she's going to be okay, right?" Michael didn't have the answer, but he knew that Ava needed to hear something hopeful. "The doctors are doing everything they can," he said softly. "She's a fighter, just like you." Ava didn't respond, but Michael could see the tiny glimmer of hope in her eyes. He wasn't sure how long they would be here, or what the future held for Ava and her mother. But in that moment, he made a promise to himself. He would not walk away from this. He couldn't. He had spent too many years building a life that meant nothing. Now, in front of him, was a chance to build something real, something that mattered. As the night wore on, Michael found himself thinking about the decisions he had made in his life, the choices that had led him here, to this moment. He had worked hard to get where he was, but he realized now that the work that truly mattered wasn't about climbing higher or accumulating more. It was about the people you helped along the way, the lives you touched, and the love you gave. And for the first time in a long time, Michael felt like he was on the right path. He wasn't just a businessman anymore. He was someone who could make a real difference in the lives of others. The first step, he realized, was right here. It was in this hospital room, with Ava and her mother. He didn't know what the future held for them, but he would make sure they weren't alone in it. He would be there for them, no matter what. And with that thought, a sense of peace settled over him. He wasn't alone anymore, and neither was Ava. Asterisk, asterisk. Millionaire CEO saw a poor girl, mocked for her torn dress, then learned a truth that broke his heart. Asterisk, asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The next few days passed in a blur, with Michael finding himself in a whirlwind of emotions and decisions he never thought he'd have to face. Ava's mother, still in critical condition, was kept under close observation, her life hanging in the balance. Michael visited the hospital every day, his life outside of this place fading into the background. Ava, although quiet, seemed to draw strength from his presence. It was clear that she was trying to hold everything together, but Michael could see the cracks, the fear beneath her calm exterior. One afternoon, as he sat with her in the hospital room, the weight of the situation hit him again. Ava had been so resilient, but she was just a child who had been through more than anyone her age should ever have to endure. He thought about the promise he made to her that night when they arrived. He would not let her face this alone. The door to the room creaked open, and a doctor entered, his face grim. Michael stood, his heart racing, and Ava's eyes immediately found his. "How is she?" Michael asked, his voice low, hoping for good news. The doctor paused for a moment before speaking, his words measured and careful. "She's stable for now, but her condition is still very serious. We're doing everything we can, but we need to prepare for the worst." Ava's grip on Michael's hand tightened at the doctor's words, and Michael felt a knot form in his stomach. He wasn't ready to hear that. He wasn't ready to think of a world where Ava would be alone. He had already seen the strength in this little girl, and he couldn't bear the thought of her losing the one person who had always been there for her. The doctor went on to explain the treatment plan, but Michael could barely focus. All he could think about was the look on Ava's face, the way her eyes had widened in fear when the doctor mentioned the possibility of her mother not making it. Michael felt a surge of protectiveness, the need to shield her from that fear, to somehow take that burden from her. As the doctor left, Michael sat back down beside Ava, who had already turned her gaze back to her mother's motionless form. Michael wanted to say something comforting, something that would make everything better. But the truth was, he didn't have the answers. He didn't know what would happen next, or how he could fix things. But he knew one thing. He couldn't leave her. He couldn't abandon her, like so many others had done. "Ava," he said softly, pulling her attention back to him. "You're not alone. I'm here, and I'll stay with you, no matter what happens." Ava looked up at him, her eyes searching his face as if trying to gauge whether he truly meant it. "But what if she?" Her voice cracked, and she couldn't finish the sentence. Michael reached out, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "If she doesn't make it, we'll still be here. I'll still be here for you." Ava nodded slowly, the tears welling up in her eyes. She didn't speak, but the weight of her words hung in the air between them. Michael could see that she was struggling, trying to hold it together. But it was clear that the fear of losing her mother was more than she could bear. The next few days were a blur of hospital visits, quiet moments in the waiting room, and long nights in the hospital. Michael spent every possible moment with Ava, staying by her side, comforting her when she broke down, and offering whatever reassurance he could. He had started to care for her in a way he never imagined possible. And the more time he spent with her, the more he realized that she was becoming like family to him. Despite the uncertainty of her mother's condition, Ava began to show signs of hope. There were moments when she smiled, moments when she laughed softly at something Michael said, and for a brief instant, the heavy burden that weighed on her seemed to lift. It wasn't much, but it was enough to give Michael a glimpse of the girl she could be, a child full of life and joy, not burdened by the darkness that had clouded her young life. One evening, as Michael sat with Ava, he received a call from his assistant. It was a routine call, something about a business deal he needed to review, but in that moment, it felt like a world away. He realized, as he looked at Ava, that he had no interest in the business world right now. No amount of money or success could compare to what he was experiencing in this hospital room. This moment, with this girl, was everything. Ava's mother was still fighting, but with each passing day, Michael felt a sense of responsibility growing inside him. He wasn't just a businessman anymore. He was a protector, a guardian, and someone who could offer hope where there was none. The world outside seemed distant and insignificant compared to the bond he was forming with Ava. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in his life, he was ready to face it, whatever it might bring. Millionaire CEO saw a poor girl mocked for her torn dress, then learned a truth that broke his heart. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. As the days turned into weeks, Michael began to see a side of life he had never truly understood before. The reality of Ava's situation settled heavily on him. Her mother was still in a critical condition, and every visit to the hospital seemed to add a new layer of uncertainty to the future. The doctors had done their best, but they weren't offering much in terms of hope. Michael had already made plans to step in if anything were to happen to Ava's mother. But those plans felt like a distant thought compared to the raw reality of the situation. Ava was still a child, just a girl who had been dealt an unimaginable hand. Every day, Michael saw the weight of the world on her small shoulders, and he knew that he could not leave her to face it alone. It was in these moments that Michael realized how much he had grown attached to her. He had always been a man of control, a man who prided himself on making the right decisions, but now he found himself in uncharted territory. He couldn't control what happened to Ava or her mother. All he could do was be there, offering comfort, security, and whatever small amount of support he could provide. One evening, as the sun set and the hospital room grew darker, Michael sat beside Ava, his mind running through the many unanswered questions swirling around them. The sound of the heart monitor was the only thing breaking the silence. Ava's mother was still unconscious, her condition deteriorating slowly but steadily. The uncertainty of the situation made Michael feel helpless, something he was not accustomed to. But when he looked over at Ava, sitting by her mother's side, clutching her hand like it was the only thing keeping her anchored, he knew that he couldn't walk away. "Are you okay?" Michael asked, his voice soft as he watched Ava. She nodded slightly, but didn't say anything. She was always so quiet, holding her emotions close to her chest. Michael wasn't sure what to say next, but he couldn't stand to see her this way. "I'm not going anywhere, Ava," he said gently. "I'm here for you, and I'll stay here as long as you need me." Ava's eyes flickered up to meet his, and for a brief moment, he saw the vulnerability she had been hiding. She opened her mouth as if to say something, but the words got caught in her throat. She looked down at her mother's hand again, as though trying to draw strength from it. Michael could feel the weight of her silence, and in that moment, he realized just how much responsibility he had taken on. Ava had no one else. Her mother had been the one constant in her life, but with her mother's health in jeopardy, everything was uncertain. Michael knew that, for the first time in his life, he wasn't just responsible for his own fate. He was responsible for Ava's too. The next morning, as Michael arrived at the hospital, a nurse approached him with urgent news. Ava's mother's condition had worsened overnight, and the doctors needed to make a decision about her care. Michael's heart sunk. He had known this moment would come, but he hadn't been prepared for the reality of it. He walked into the room and found Ava still sitting by her mother's side. She looked up when he entered, her face tired and drained, but still determined. Michael took a deep breath and walked over to her. "How is she?" he asked quietly. Ava shook her head, her voice barely above a whisper. "She's not getting better." Michael's heart tightened. He didn't know what to say. He could see the fear in her eyes, the fear that her mother might not make it. He placed a hand on her shoulder, trying to offer some comfort, but the weight of the situation was almost too much to bear. "We'll get through this, Ava," he said softly, even though he wasn't sure if he believed it himself. "You're not alone in this." Ava nodded, but her eyes were still full of fear. She looked at her mother, tears welling up in her eyes, and Michael knew that she was holding on to her mother's hand not just out of love, but because she was terrified of losing her. The hours that followed were a blur of doctors, decisions, and quiet moments of shared grief. Michael stayed by Ava's side, offering whatever support he could, though he felt as though there was little he could do. Eventually, the decision was made. Ava's mother would be kept comfortable, but the doctors couldn't offer any more life-saving treatments. It was a painful moment, one that Michael knew would change everything for Ava. As the days passed, Michael found himself growing closer to Ava. She still didn't talk much, but she began to trust him more. She would let him help her with small tasks, like getting her something to eat or sitting with her mother while she slept. Michael knew that Ava had a long road ahead of her, and so did he. He couldn't fix everything. He couldn't make her mother better, but he could make sure that Ava didn't have to face this alone. In the days that followed, he made sure to be there, every step of the way. He became the one stable thing in Ava's life, the one person she could count on. It wasn't much, but it was all he could offer. And, somehow, it was enough. Asterisk. Asterisk. Millionaire CEO saw a poor girl mocked for her torn dress, then learned a truth that broke his heart. Asterisk, asterisk. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The days blurred together as Michael stayed by Ava's side, their world confined to the sterile walls of the hospital. Her mother's condition continued to decline, and it seemed that with each passing hour, Ava grew quieter, more withdrawn. Michael had never been particularly good at dealing with emotions, and watching this little girl face such overwhelming sorrow was something he wasn't prepared for. Despite all his wealth, his success, his power, none of it had prepared him for this moment. He could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. He knew Ava needed him, but he didn't know how to help her cope with the inevitable loss she was facing. He could offer her food, shelter, even the security of a home, but he couldn't take away the pain of losing her mother. Every time he tried to speak to her, to offer words of comfort, she seemed to pull further away. Ava had always been quiet, but now, she was more like a ghost, barely speaking, and when she did, her voice was barely audible. One evening, after another long day of waiting and hoping, Michael sat down next to her in the small hospital room. The soft beep of the machines monitoring her mother's condition filled the air, but for once, the noise didn't bring the comfort it usually did. It only reminded him of how fragile life was. Ava sat in the chair beside her mother's bed, her gaze fixed on her mother's face. Michael could see the tremor in her hands as she clutched her mother's hand. "Ava," he said gently, trying to bring her attention back to him. She didn't look up, her focus solely on her mother. He hesitated, unsure of what to say next. He had learned that words often felt hollow in these situations, but he needed to reach her somehow. "Ava, it's okay to be scared," he said, his voice low and sincere. "You don't have to be strong all the time." Ava finally looked up at him, her eyes filled with sadness and confusion. "I don't know what to do," she whispered. "I don't know how to do this without her." Michael's heart broke for the little girl. He could see that she was holding on to her mother, not just out of love, but because she felt responsible for everything. The weight of that responsibility was too much for someone so young. "You're not alone in this," Michael said softly. "I'm here. I'll help you through this, no matter what happens." Ava's eyes filled with tears, and she finally let herself cry. Michael reached out and gently pulled her into a hug, letting her sob into his chest. He didn't have all the answers, but he could be there for her. For the first time, he allowed himself to let down his guard. It wasn't about money or business deals. It wasn't about success or status. In that moment, the only thing that mattered was Ava. And he realized just how much he cared for her. As the days passed, the inevitable became harder to ignore. Ava's mother's condition continued to worsen, and the doctors made it clear that there was nothing more they could do. Michael knew that Ava was barely holding on, and he couldn't imagine the pain she was feeling. One evening, as he sat by her side, a nurse came in with the news that Ava's mother didn't have much time left. Michael stood up, his heart sinking. He had to be strong for Ava, even though his own heart was heavy with the weight of everything that had happened. "Ava," he said, his voice shaking slightly, "I know this is hard. I can't imagine what you're going through right now, but I want you to know that you don't have to face this alone. I'm here, and I'll be here every step of the way." Ava didn't say anything, but she looked up at him with those big, sad eyes, and for the first time, he saw a flicker of hope in her expression. It was as though she was beginning to trust him, to believe that he really would be there for her. The next morning, Michael and Ava sat in the room together, silently watching as her mother's condition continued to deteriorate. Michael held her hand, offering comfort in the only way he knew how. He didn't know how long they would be there, or how much time they had left, but he promised himself that he would be there for Ava no matter what. When the end finally came, it was peaceful. Ava's mother passed away quietly, with Michael and Ava by her side. The hospital room was filled with a quiet sorrow, but also with the sense that, despite the pain, they were not truly alone. In the days that followed, Michael made arrangements for Ava. He wasn't sure what her future would hold, but he knew that he would do everything in his power to give her a stable life, a life where she could heal and grow. As for Ava, she seemed to slowly come to terms with the loss of her mother, though the grief would never fully leave her. But she wasn't alone anymore. Michael had made a promise, and he intended to keep it. He would be her guardian, her protector, and for the first time, he felt like he was truly part of something meaningful. As he looked at Ava, he realized that life had a way of surprising you, of leading you down paths you never expected. And in this moment, he was grateful for the path he had found, the path that led him to her. Asterisk, asterisk. Millionaire CEO saw a poor girl, mocked for her torn dress, then learned a truth that broke his heart. Asterisk, asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. It had been 2 weeks since Ava's mother passed away. The funeral was a quiet affair, a somber reminder of how fragile life could be. Michael, as promised, was there every step of the way, making sure Ava wasn't alone, even as she processed the unimaginable loss. Though Michael had tried to shield Ava from the worst of it, he could see the toll it had taken on her, the quiet sorrow in her eyes, the way she walked a little slower, as if the weight of the world was resting on her small shoulders. She had been through so much in such a short amount of time, and now, the silence of their new life together felt almost suffocating. Michael knew he had to be patient. Ava wasn't just mourning the loss of her mother. She was mourning the life she had once known, the security she had taken for granted. Michael couldn't give her back what she had lost, but he could offer something else: stability, security, and a home. He couldn't replace her mother, but he could try to give her a sense of belonging. He had already made arrangements for them to move into one of his properties, a large, modern house in a quiet neighborhood, far removed from the harshness of the city that had been Ava's world. He wanted her to feel safe, to feel like she could have a future beyond the sorrow she had known. But even as he made these arrangements, something in him couldn't help but wonder if it was enough. Could he truly offer Ava the comfort she needed? Could he give her a sense of hope again? As they moved into the new house, Michael found himself spending more time at home, trying to help Ava adjust to her new life. It was a big house, too big for just the two of them, but Michael thought that the space would give Ava room to breathe, room to grow. She had her own room now, decorated with soft colors and a few stuffed animals she had kept from her childhood. It was a start, but it felt like nothing compared to the comfort of her mother's arms. One evening, as Michael prepared dinner in the kitchen, he heard soft footsteps behind him. He turned to see Ava standing in the doorway, her eyes wide as she looked around the house. She hadn't said much since they moved in, and Michael knew that she was still processing everything. But in that moment, he saw something in her eyes, a flicker of curiosity, maybe even hope. "Do you like it here?" Michael asked, his voice gentle. Ava nodded slowly, but there was still a hesitation in her gaze. "It's different," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "But it's nice." Michael smiled, though it was a sad smile, because he knew that nice wasn't enough to heal the pain she was carrying. "We can make it home," he said softly. "We'll figure it out together." Ava didn't respond right away, but she walked over to the kitchen counter where Michael was working. "What's for dinner?" she asked, her curiosity finally breaking through the silence. "Spaghetti," Michael replied with a small chuckle. "I'm not much of a cook, but I think I can manage spaghetti." Ava smiled for the first time in days, a small but genuine smile that made Michael's heart swell. It was the first real connection they had made in this new place, and it gave him a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, they were starting to find their way. As they sat down to eat that evening, Michael realized something important. It wasn't the house that would make this place a home. It was the time they spent together, the moments of connection, the little things that would start to fill the emptiness. Ava wasn't ready to let go of her past, and Michael knew that it would take time for her to adjust. But he was willing to wait. He was willing to give her the time and space she needed to heal. He wasn't going anywhere. As the days passed, Michael continued to be there for Ava, offering her support and patience as she slowly adjusted to her new life. He enrolled her in school, helped her meet new friends, and did his best to create a routine that would help her feel secure. But the real healing, Michael knew, would come in its own time. He couldn't force Ava to open up, but he could offer her the love and care she needed. And slowly, she began to respond. She started to talk more, to smile more, and to show signs of the joyful girl she had been before tragedy struck. It wasn't a quick process, but it was progress. One evening, as they sat together on the porch, watching the sunset, Ava turned to Michael. "Do you think I'll ever be okay?" she asked, her voice full of uncertainty. Michael looked at her, his heart aching for her, but also full of hope. "I think you will," he said softly. "It won't happen overnight, but you're stronger than you know. And you're not alone. You have me, and I'll always be here for you." Ava smiled, a small but real smile, and for the first time, in a long while, Michael felt like they were moving forward, together. Asterisk asterisk. Millionaire CEO saw a poor girl, mocked for her torn dress, then learned a truth that broke his heart. Asterisk. Asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. As time passed, life for Michael and Ava began to settle into a rhythm. The house that once felt too large and too quiet had started to feel alive again. There were moments of laughter now, moments where the silence was replaced by the sound of Ava humming to herself, or the soft pitter-patter of her footsteps echoing through the hallways. Michael had made it his mission to give Ava a new beginning. But even with all his efforts, he couldn't ignore the shadows that still lingered. The world outside hadn't changed. It was still harsh, judgmental, and full of people who didn't understand the bond that had formed between him and the young girl he had taken under his care. One morning, Michael dropped Ava off at her new school. It was her first week there, and he could tell that she was nervous. She tried to hide it behind a brave smile, but he could see it in her eyes. He gave her a reassuring nod before she disappeared through the school gates, clutching her backpack tightly. As he drove away, he couldn't help but worry. He wanted so badly for her to be accepted, to have friends who would see her for who she truly was, not for where she came from. But the world could be cruel, and it wasn't long before that cruelty found its way back into their lives. Later that week, as Michael sat in his office, his phone buzzed with a notification. He glanced down to see a message from one of his employees, a link to an online article. The headline made his stomach drop. Millionaire CEO accused of adopting orphan for publicity. The article was filled with speculation and insinuations, painting him as a manipulative businessman using Ava's tragedy to polish his public image. Photos of him and Ava leaving the hospital and attending the funeral had been splashed across the internet, taken out of context, and twisted into something ugly. Michael felt a surge of anger rise in his chest. He knew the media could be ruthless. But this was different. This wasn't just about him. This was about Ava. She didn't deserve to be dragged into this kind of scrutiny. He immediately called his public relations team, demanding they remove the stories. But by then it was too late. The damage had already been done. Within hours, his phone was buzzing with calls from reporters and associates, all wanting statements, all demanding explanations. He ignored them all. His only concern now was Ava. When he arrived home that evening, he found her sitting on the couch, staring at the television. The news was playing, and there it was again, the story. Her picture, and his name plastered across the screen. She looked up at him, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. "Why are they saying those things about you?" she asked softly. Michael felt his heart sink. He turned off the television and knelt down beside her. "They're wrong, Ava," he said firmly. "They don't know the truth. They don't know us. Ava's eyes filled with tears. But what if people at school see it? What if they think it's true? Michael didn't know how to answer that. He wished he could protect her from the world, from the lies and the cruelty. But he knew he couldn't. All he could do was stand by her, no matter what. "You don't have to worry about what other people think," he said gently. "The only thing that matters is what we know, and we know the truth." Ava nodded, but the sadness in her eyes told him that the words weren't enough. The next few days were difficult. Michael tried to carry on with his work, but the scandal had spread. His company's board began to question his judgment, and his reputation, which he had spent years building, was now under threat. For the first time in a long time, Michael felt powerless. But through it all, Ava was his anchor. Despite the whispers and the stares she faced at school, she never complained. She still smiled when he picked her up in the afternoons, still asked him how his day was. She didn't care about the rumors or the headlines. To her, he wasn't a millionaire CEO. He was just Michael, the man who had kept his promise and given her a home when she had no one else. One evening, after a particularly difficult day, Michael sat outside on the porch, lost in thought. Ava quietly joined him, sitting down beside him. She didn't say anything for a while, just sat there, watching the stars begin to appear in the night sky. Then, after a long pause, she spoke. "You know what my mom used to say?" she asked softly. Michael turned to her, his expression curious. "What's that?" "She used to say that people will always talk, but the truth doesn't need defending. It just needs time." Michael smiled faintly, the weight in his chest easing a little. "Your mom was a wise woman," he said. Ava nodded. "She was. And I think she'd be happy that you're here with me." Michael felt his throat tighten at her words. He reached out and gently squeezed her hand. "I think she'd be proud of you too," he said quietly. In that moment, as they sat together under the starlit sky, Michael realized something. It didn't matter what the world thought, or what the headlines said. The truth was right here, in this bond they shared, in the quiet strength of a little girl who had lost everything, but still found the courage to trust again. Asterisk. Asterisk. Millionaire CEO saw a poor girl mocked for her torn dress, then learned a truth that broke his heart. Asterisk. Asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The weeks following the media storm had been challenging. Michael tried his best to shield Ava from the worst of it, but he knew she was still struggling. The rumors had slowed, but the damage to his reputation lingered, and he couldn't escape the nagging feeling that his world was closing in around him. Yet, despite the noise and chaos, he remained resolute in his promise to Ava. His commitment to her had never wavered. He had grown to love her like his own daughter, and the thought of failing her, of not being there when she needed him most, was unbearable. One evening, as Michael sat in his study, reviewing documents from his company, he heard a soft knock on the door. He looked up to find Ava standing in the doorway, her expression unreadable. She hadn't come in much lately, preferring to stay in her room after school. But tonight, something was different. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" she asked softly, her voice carrying a sense of vulnerability that Michael hadn't heard in a while. Michael set his papers down, standing up from his desk. "Of course, Ava. Come on in." She stepped into the room, her hands wringing nervously in front of her. He could tell she had something on her mind, something important. What's on your mind? He asked gently, motioning for her to sit down. Ava hesitated for a moment before she spoke. I've been thinking about everything that's happened, she began, her eyes fixed on the floor. I know you've been trying to protect me, but I don't want you to think I'm not grateful. Michael frowned, not fully understanding where this was going. Ava, no, listen, she interrupted, lifting her head to meet his gaze. I've been thinking about how hard it must be for you too. I know you've had to deal with all the people saying things about you, about us. I don't want you to feel like I'm not okay with what you've done for me. Michael's heart tightened in his chest. He hadn't expected this. Ava, so young and so full of grief, was still trying to protect him, trying to make sense of the world around her, despite the chaos. Ava, he said, his voice catching, I'm here for you, always. You don't have to worry about what other people think. I'm doing this because I care about you, not because of anything else. You're my family now. Ava's eyes softened, and she sat down in the chair beside him. I know, she whispered, her voice barely audible. But sometimes I feel like I don't belong here. Like maybe I'm in the way of your life. I don't want to be a burden to you. Michael's heart broke at her words. How could she possibly think she was a burden? He reached out, taking her hand in his. Ava, listen to me, he said, his voice firm yet gentle. You are not a burden. You are my responsibility now. I made a promise to you and your mother, and I'm not going anywhere. You are not in the way. You are my family, and I'm here for you through everything. Ava looked down at their hands, her shoulders shaking slightly as tears welled up in her eyes. I don't want to let you down, she whispered. You've done so much for me already, and I don't know if I can ever repay you for everything. Michael squeezed her hand reassuringly, his own throat tight with emotion. You don't have to repay me, Ava. You never have to repay me. All I want is for you to be happy, for you to feel safe, and for you to know that no matter what happens, you'll always have a place here with me. I will never let you down. Ava sniffled and wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I know you won't, she said softly, her voice filled with gratitude. But I'm scared. I'm scared of what's going to happen next. I don't know how to move on from all this. Michael looked at her, his heart aching for her. He had been through his own share of pain, but seeing her struggle with the weight of the past made him realize just how strong she was. She had already come so far. I know it's hard, he said, his voice steady. But you don't have to do it alone. We'll take it one day at a time. Okay? We'll move forward together, no matter what happens. And I'll be right here beside you, every step of the way. Ava looked up at him, her expression softening as a small smile tugged at the corners of her lips. For the first time in a long while, Michael saw hope in her eyes. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it was a start. She was starting to believe again, and for Michael, that was all he needed. The conversation didn't fix everything, but it was a turning point. Ava was beginning to heal, and Michael knew that their journey together had only just begun. They would face challenges ahead, there was no doubt about that. But in that moment, sitting there together, Michael knew they would face them side by side. And that was enough to give him hope for the future. They were no longer just surviving. They were learning to live again. Asterisk, asterisk. Millionaire CEO saw a poor girl, mocked for her torn dress, then learned a truth that broke his heart. Asterisk, asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The days that followed brought a sense of quiet change into Michael and Ava's life. They had started to build something together, something that was slowly taking shape in the home that had once felt so empty. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. Ava's mornings had become more routine, and though there were still days when her grief was all-consuming, she was finding her way. Michael had made it his mission to ensure that Ava had as much normalcy as possible. He enrolled her in a local school, making sure she felt welcomed, even though he knew she had her own fears about fitting in. Slowly, the days of isolation seemed to fade as Ava began to interact more with other children. Her once quiet demeanor was slowly beginning to change, but despite the progress, there was still a part of Ava that carried the weight of her past. With her a weight Michael knew she couldn't shake overnight. One afternoon, when Michael picked Ava up from school, he noticed something was off. She didn't seem to be her usual self. Her backpack, usually slung with purpose over her shoulder, was hanging limply at her side. As they walked toward the car, he could see the tension in her shoulders. He knew better than to ask immediately, but the silence between them spoke volumes. Once they were in the car, Michael finally broke the silence. "What's going on, Ava? You've been quiet all day." Ava sat still for a moment before responding, her voice barely a whisper. "They were talking about me," she said, staring out the window. Michael's heart sank. He had known that this moment would come, the moment when Ava would face the harshness of the world outside their home. He'd hoped it would take longer, that she would have more time to heal, but reality had other plans. "What were they saying?" he asked, keeping his tone gentle. Ava's voice cracked as she continued. They said I don't belong there. They said I'm different because of you, that I only got in because of you, because you adopted me, because you're rich. They made fun of me." Michael's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. He could feel the anger rising within him. But he knew this wasn't about him. It was about Ava, and how deeply she was hurting. She wasn't just facing the judgment of strangers. She was facing the fear that maybe she didn't deserve the life she had now. That maybe the pain and shame of her past would follow her forever. "Ava," Michael said softly, "I want you to listen to me very carefully. You are not different because of me. You are not defined by what anyone says about you. You are strong. You are brave. And you belong right where you are." Ava sniffled, wiping away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. "But what if they're right?" she asked, her voice trembling. "What if I don't fit in? What if people only see me as the girl who was saved? The girl who had no one?" Michael felt his chest tighten at her words. How could he help her see the truth when the world seemed so determined to make her feel small, to make her feel like she didn't belong? "Ava, you are not what people say about you," Michael said firmly, turning to look at her for a brief moment before focusing on the road again. "You are your own person, and you have every right to be here, to be who you are. And no one, not a single person, can take that away from you." Ava's eyes were still filled with doubt, but Michael could see that something in his words was starting to reach her. He wasn't sure if it was enough, but he had to try. "You don't need to prove anything to anyone, Ava. Not to the kids at school, not to anyone. Just be you. You've already shown so much strength, and I'm proud of you. Every single day." The car fell into a quiet that felt more comfortable than the one that had existed earlier. Ava still looked out the window, but Michael could tell she was processing his words. It wasn't going to be an overnight change. She wouldn't suddenly feel accepted or at ease. But at least she was beginning to understand that she didn't need to seek validation from anyone else. She was worthy of love and respect, simply because she was Ava. Michael drove them home in silence, but it wasn't a heavy silence anymore. When they arrived, Ava looked at him with a small, uncertain smile. "Thanks, Michael," she said softly. He nodded, smiling back at her. "Always, Ava. You're not alone in this." That evening, as they sat together in the living room, something shifted between them. Ava didn't talk much, but there was a calmness in her demeanor that hadn't been there before. She still had a long way to go, but Michael could see that she was beginning to trust in the idea that maybe, just maybe, she could find peace, despite everything she had been through. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were starting to live again. Michael knew there would still be difficult days ahead. The scars of the past would never fully disappear, but they didn't have to define her future. Together, they would find their way forward. And for the first time in a long time, Michael felt a sense of hope for what was to come. Asterisk. Asterisk. Millionaire CEO saw a poor girl, mocked for her torn dress, then learned a truth that broke his heart. Asterisk. Asterisk. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. As the months passed, Michael continued to do everything he could to ensure Ava's life was as stable as possible. She was slowly beginning to find a new sense of normalcy, though it was clear that the road ahead would be long and filled with challenges. Ava had started to open up more, and Michael was grateful for every small sign of progress, though he knew that healing wasn't something that could be rushed. He made sure to keep a steady routine for her school, meals, and quiet evenings at home. There was a new sense of peace between them, but there were still days when Ava seemed lost in thought, her eyes distant, as if she were still processing the trauma that had shaped her young life. Michael respected her silence, knowing that it would take time for her to fully heal. Yet, the weight of the world continued to bear down on him. Ava's life was in his hands now, and though he never once wavered in his commitment, he was still learning how to be the parent she needed. One evening, after Ava had gone to bed, Michael found himself sitting alone in the living room, his thoughts swirling. The weight of the situation of being both a protector and a guide to this young girl had begun to feel heavier than he had expected. He looked around the house, the quiet echo of their lives together settling in the corners of the rooms. It had been a long road to this point, and though the house had become a home, he couldn't ignore the fears that lingered in the back of his mind. Was he doing enough? Could he truly give Ava the life she deserved? The door creaked softly, pulling Michael from his thoughts. He looked up to see Ava standing in the hallway, her silhouette barely visible in the dim light. "Ava?" he asked softly, his voice laced with concern. She stepped into the room, her expression a mix of hesitation and something else, something deeper. "Can I talk to you?" she asked quietly. Michael's heart skipped a beat. "Of course, sweetheart. Come sit." Ava slowly walked toward him and sat down beside him on the couch. She fidgeted with her hands, her fingers picking at the fabric of her sleeves. Michael could tell she was trying to find the right words, and it reminded him of the shy, quiet girl he had first met. But this time, there was something different in her demeanor, a sense of resolve, as though she had finally reached a decision. "Michael," Ava began, her voice steady but filled with uncertainty. "I've been thinking a lot about everything lately, about what you've done for me, how you've always been there for me, even when things got hard. Michael felt his chest tighten. He had always known Ava was struggling, but hearing her acknowledge it out loud was a reminder of just how much she had been through. He reached out and placed a hand gently on hers. "You don't have to thank me, Ava. You're family now. I'll always be here for you." She nodded, but Michael could see the conflict in her eyes. "I know," she said, "but I feel like I don't deserve this. I don't deserve all the things you've given me. I don't know how to be the person you think I am." Michael's heart broke as he listened to her words. He had always seen the strength in Ava, even when she couldn't see it herself. But in that moment, he realized that she was still grappling with feelings of worthlessness, with the lingering belief that she didn't belong in this life he had given her. "Ava," he said softly, his voice full of conviction, "you are more than worthy of everything. You deserve every bit of happiness, love, and safety that I can give you. You don't have to prove anything to anyone, least of all me." Ava's eyes filled with tears. She wiped them away quickly, but Michael could see the vulnerability in her face. "But I'm not the same as other kids," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I didn't have the same life. I don't know if I'll ever fit in." Michael pulled her closer, wrapping an arm around her shoulder. "Ava," he said gently, "you are exactly who you're meant to be, and you don't have to fit into anyone's idea of what you should be. You are perfect just as you are, and I will help you figure out the rest, one step at a time. You don't have to do this alone." For a long moment, Ava didn't speak. She simply sat there, leaning into Michael's embrace, the weight of everything beginning to lift, if only for a moment. Michael knew the healing process would take time, but in that moment, he felt the first spark of hope. Ava wasn't just surviving anymore. She was starting to believe in herself, starting to realize that she deserved the love and care that Michael had given her. She was beginning to see herself through his eyes, not as a broken child, but as someone worthy of a future. It was a quiet victory, but it was the most important one they had achieved together. Michael knew that the road ahead would still be challenging, but for the first time, he felt that they were moving in the right direction. And as he held Ava close, he made a promise to her, one that he would keep for the rest of his life. He would always be there for her, no matter what came next. Asterisk, asterisk. Millionaire CEO saw a poor girl, mocked for her torn dress, then learned a truth that broke his heart. Asterisk, asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The months passed, and as the seasons changed, so did Michael and Ava's lives. The road had been long, filled with pain and loss, but they had found their way to a new kind of family. Michael had never imagined his life would be like this, raising a young girl who had endured so much. But as time went on, he came to realize that his world had been transformed in ways he could never have anticipated. Ava, too, was transforming. The girl who once walked through life with fear in her eyes had begun to embrace the future. She had learned to smile again, to laugh again, and most importantly, she had begun to trust again. Every small step she took was a victory, and Michael felt immense pride in her strength. There were still tough days, of course. Days when the past would creep in, and the weight of everything she had lost would come rushing back. But Michael was always there, a steady presence in her life, offering the love and support she needed. One afternoon, Michael was sitting at his desk in the study when Ava walked in. She had a notebook in her hand, her expression one of quiet determination. "Michael," she said softly, I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about being strong, and I think I'm ready to do something. Michael raised an eyebrow, intrigued. What do you mean? Ava sat down across from him, her eyes meeting his with a sense of purpose he hadn't seen before. I want to help other kids who've been through what I've been through, she said. I know it's not easy, and I know I still have a long way to go, but I want to give back. I want to help them see that they're not alone. Michael felt a surge of emotion, his chest tightening with pride. Ava, he said, his voice thick with emotion. That's an incredible idea. You've been through so much, and you've come so far. I know you can do anything you set your mind to. Ava smiled, a genuine, bright smile that lit up her face. I want to start a support group, she said. For kids who don't have anyone. I want them to know that there's hope, that they don't have to be alone like I was. Michael's heart swelled with pride. Ava had turned her pain into something beautiful, something that could help others heal. You've already helped me more than you know, Michael said quietly. You've made me a better person just by being in my life. Ava's smile softened. I think we've both helped each other. Michael stood up and walked over to her, pulling her into a hug. I'm so proud of you, Ava, he whispered. You're going to change lives. The next few weeks were filled with planning, meetings, and setting up the support group Ava had envisioned. Michael stood by her every step of the way, offering advice, helping with logistics, and most importantly, supporting her dream. The group, once it was established, became a lifeline for many children who had gone through similar experiences. Ava became a beacon of hope for them, showing them that healing was possible, even after the darkest of times. The support group meetings were full of laughter, tears, and shared stories. And as Michael watched Ava grow into the young woman she was becoming, he couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sense of gratitude. He had never expected his life to take this turn, but he was thankful every day for it. Ava had brought him a new kind of purpose, one that went beyond success or money. She had shown him the power of love, of compassion, and of healing. As the group continued to grow, Ava's confidence blossomed. She was no longer the quiet, scared girl who had been mocked for her torn dress. She was a leader, a role model, and a young woman who had learned to rise above her past. Michael watched her, amazed at how far she had come, and he knew that this was only the beginning. The future was bright for Ava. She had found her voice, and she was using it to make a difference. And Michael, standing beside her, knew that together they could face whatever the future held. Their journey had not been easy, but it had been worth it. Michael had learned the true meaning of family, and Ava had learned the power of resilience. They had come through the storm, and now they were ready to embrace the sunshine. As they stood together, looking out at the world ahead of them, Michael knew one thing for sure: they would never be alone again.